Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, India's Tiger Quest begins, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Aditya Panda. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Take it away, Aditya.
Thank you, Rob. Hello, everyone. I hope you've been having an excellent start to the week. I certainly have been having a fantastic time here in India now that our summer expeditions have begun, and we have just ended our first India Tiger Quest expedition. And I can't wait to share all the exciting sightings that we've been having. So before I start today's webinar, I am going to introduce myself again for those of you who are attending one of my webinars for the first time, and for those of you who haven't traveled with me. My name is Aditya Panda, and I've been leading NatHab expeditions in India since 2016. I lead what we call India's Tiger Trips, NatHab's Tiger Trips, the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, and India Tiger Quest, which I shall be talking about today, as well as the India Tiger Photo Expedition. That's the new name for what used to be called India Tiger Safari Photo Pro Expedition. I shall be talking a little bit about that as well. When I'm not leading NatHab expeditions across India, I am based in eastern India, in a state called Odisha, which is my home state, and I involve myself here in the conservation of tiger and elephant landscapes. So let's get started. It's April now in India, and that's officially the beginning of summer here. March is still considered spring in most parts of India, and it's still a pleasant month. A little bit of the winter chill still remains in March, and while it's beginning to turn into summer in March, it's still not as hot or dry as the peak of summer is in mainland India. But April truly marks the beginning of the peak of summer, and for the next 3 months now, April, May, and June, we are going to have mainly hot and dry weather until the monsoon rains arrive sometime towards the end of June. Now, why is summer so special or so important in Tigerland? Well, India's tiger habitats are primarily forest and primarily moist and dry deciduous forests. So, when the monsoon rains arrive in June, they will go on for a good 3 or 4 months. June, July, August, September, and it's only in October that the rains really begin to subside. And what that means is that tremendous amounts of rain and tremendous amounts of green foliage in the forests. And that greenery, the thick, lush greenery, lasts all the way into March, when spring is at its peak, and that's when the jungle begins to dry up. Now, throughout that period until March, vegetation is thick. Water is usually everywhere. There's no shortage of water. And the animals are fairly well distributed in our forests. The tigers are not confined around, drying sources of water. They can find water in several places, so they don't necessarily have to be close to or around, the last major source of water in an area. There are multiple sources of water. Also, the thick vegetation provides a lot of cover for the animals to hide, and sightings therefore dramatically improve once summer begins. Hot weather forces the tigers to be close to water. Tigers, unlike most other cats, love water. And on a hot summer day, there's nothing a tiger likes more than to lie neck deep in a nice pool of water that is ideally in the shade. And in the summer, vegetation also dries up. Visibility improves dramatically. And that is why in the summer we choose to go to India's or the world's driest tiger habitat at the hottest and driest time of the year. And that, uh, ladies and gentlemen, gives me an opportunity to introduce our summer tiger expeditions in India, which are India Tiger Quest, which is a week-long expedition um, starting and ending in Delhi. That takes us to Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, where we go on 7 game drives, and it is a fantastic opportunity to find tigers and watch them. We also have a longer version of this expedition that is targeted at serious photographers, which is called the India Tiger Photo Expedition. The India Tiger Photo Expedition is 10 days long and takes us on 11 game drives in the Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, as well as 1 game drive in in a reserve close to a city called Jaipur, which is the reserve is called the Jhalana Leopard Reserve, and we get to go on 1 afternoon game drive there, looking for leopards, which are otherwise usually very difficult to photograph. But at Jhalana, we have no other big cat. The leopard is the top cat, and it is confident and it is easily visible. On that expedition, we also visit some other wildlife habitats around Ranthambore, and the main focus on that trip is high quality tiger and other wildlife photography, as well as other forms of photography such as street photography and architectural photography when we get chances in Delhi and Jaipur. So, with that, uh, let me get started with the curtain raiser trip of this season, the first India Tiger Quest expedition that I led and finished just 2 days ago. Um, we had a fantastic trip. It was an amazing first trip of the season. Some excellent sightings of tiger. One very nice and very funny sloth bear sighting, as you will find out soon, and lots of other wildlife that we saw on that trip. So here are some of the highlights of the first India Tiger Quest expedition of the season. So when we arrived at Ranthambore from Delhi on the second day of the expedition, in the first day of the expedition is spent exploring Delhi, just doing a little bit of sightseeing and getting used to sights and sounds in India. And the next day is when we actually drive down to Ranthambore. That's a major change from earlier. Earlier, we used to fly from Delhi to Jaipur really early in the morning and then drive from Jaipur to Ranthambore. But now a brand new expressway has come up between Delhi and Ranthambore, and it's an absolute breeze to drive on. So we don't have to hurry anymore early in the morning from Delhi. We can have a nice relaxed breakfast and then a very comfortable drive to Ranthambore, and we arrive in Ranthambore just in time for lunch, after which we go on our game drive. So on that first game drive, we all 3 of our jeeps. We have only 3 jeeps for a full group on this expedition, and a full group is just 6 people. So that's not more than 2 people per jeep. So on our first game drive, all 3 of our jeeps happened to be in the same zone in the park. So we were all together and with each other. And in that zone that we were visiting, which was zone 4, earlier that morning, the guides and drivers told us that a tiger had been seen. And, the tiger had been seen in the morning just as it was beginning to get hot. And people had seen it going towards cover. Tigers are active early in the morning, and then again, they become active late in the afternoon, closer to sunset. But through the middle of the day, tigers like to lie up in a nice, shaded, cool area, especially in summer. So we were reasonably confident that the tiger would not have left the area because it had been a hot day. And we just went there and parked. And, patience always pays. So we waited patiently for over an hour. And, while there was some temptation to leave the area and go look for other things or look for tigers elsewhere, um, our guides were supremely confident that the tiger was in that area and that if we waited, then as the day or the afternoon began to cool down, there was a good chance that the tiger would get up and get active and we might even have a good sighting. So that's when we, um, were just parked overlooking this dry riverbed. We were parked at a height on a hillside, looking down into this ravine formed by a dry riverbed, and we were just periodically scanning through the cover, through the vegetation in the riverbed, hoping to catch a glimpse of a sleeping tiger. And that was when one of us saw the tiger's face in the tall grass, and our guide and I, we in each jeep we have a driver, two guests, guide comes spotter, and the expedition leader keeps rotating between jeeps. So in my jeep, our guide was the first to spot it, and the moment he mentioned it to me, I immediately found the tiger. And in a little while, our driver also saw the tiger, and I indicated to our other two jeeps to come park next to us, and I tried to point out where the tiger was to our guests, but uh, they just couldn't see it because it was in such good cover, and tigers have such excellent camouflage that it was really difficult to see it. But even the guides and drivers in our other two jeeps could not see it. And there we were, because we had known exactly where the tiger was. Now we could even see it without looking through binoculars, even with our naked eyes. That's very interesting about seeing animals. Once you found an animal, even if it is well camouflaged, and you know exactly where it is, you can see it even if you put your binoculars or your telephoto lens down. Um, so I tried pointing the tiger out to everybody, and everybody was having a pretty hard time finding it. Even you can try and see if you can find the tiger in this picture on this slide, but I can assure you there is a tiger in the slide. And I was assuring my guests too, and there was one point when they probably actually started to question what I was seeing or trying to show them. And that's when I borrowed a camera from one of our guests and took a picture and showed it back to them. And there, you see, that's how well the tiger was camouflaged. So anyhow, that was our first game drive. And if the guides and drivers and the expedition leaders see the tiger but not the guests, it doesn't really count, does it? Um, so anyhow, that was our first game drive. The sun began to set. It was time for us to leave, so we left. The next morning, Um, the jeep I was in went to zone 1 of the park, and almost 15 or 20 minutes after entering the park, we came across almost barren hillside. Barren because all the trees on the hillside had shed their leaves and visibility was excellent. There was very little undergrowth, almost none. And as we were driving up to that hill, we looked up the hillside and saw the back end of a tiger cub vanishing behind the rocks above. And there's a tigress there in that area called Sultana, which means empress in Urdu. And she had 3 cubs, and those cubs were around. We found the first cub vanishing into cover, and then the second cub, which was a male cub, was fairly confident and much closer to us, about halfway up the hill, not at the very top of the hill. And it began to, it was quite comfortable in the presence of the jeeps, even if it was by itself and mother wasn't around. And we had a long sighting of that cub. He wasn't in the best position for photographs, but it was the first clear view that our guests had had of a tiger on that trip. So we sat there and watched, and the cub lay down sometimes, got up and moved a little, and gave us a few photographic opportunities, enough opportunities to at least prove this time that we had actually seen a tiger. Anyhow, the day was warming up, and the cub was becoming less and less active, and it decided to lay down and go to sleep. And that's when we decided to leave it alone and explore the rest of the park, find some other wildlife. And then it was time to leave back to camp, and we went back for brunch and a rest, and then came back again in the afternoon. Um, in the afternoon, of course, when we came back to zone 1, we knew exactly where we had left the cubs. And there was a chance that mother might return, because the tigress Sultana had left her cubs there, and most likely gone away hunting. Cubs. These cubs are about 10 months old, and growing cubs eat a lot. And mother tigresses therefore have to spend a lot of time and effort in hunting and regularly getting prey for their cubs. So in the afternoon, we were hopeful that Sultana would have returned. Um, she would certainly return if she actually found prey, but had she not managed a successful hunt that day, there were chances that she might not return and spend another night trying to hunt. But in any case, we knew that the cubs were there, and we were hoping that at least the cubs would probably come down for a drink at a waterhole nearby and offer us a good sighting. And as we went back to that hillside, we found no sign of the cubs. So we assumed that the cubs must have all gotten together and found some shade somewhere, somewhere secluded, and that they were then resting. And it was just a matter of waiting again and hoping that they would put up a show. And that is when the weather changed. It began to get cloudy. We started to hear thunder, and it began to drizzle. We began to put our cameras away. We started to cover things up because these are open jeeps, and we had ponchos in the jeeps, but no one was really expecting rain. Uh, as it began to drizzle, the drizzle sort of began to intensify um, into harder rain, and from where we were parked, we could see another jeep that was parked about a couple of 100 yards from where we were. And, between jeeps, we were trying to cover as many likely spots as we could, so that if there was any tiger movement, one of us would spot it. And that was when, when the rain really began to pour, we noticed that the jeep in front of us was flashing its headlights towards us. So, taking that to be a sign, we immediately raced to it in that pouring rain, and we found that the Empress Sultana was walking back towards her cubs in pouring rain. It is extremely rare to watch a tiger in pouring rain because tigers, like most other animals, will take cover when inclement weather strikes. Um, so what we surmised was that Sultana had been away hunting, but as the weather changed, she might have gotten concerned about her cubs, and she must have turned back and started walking towards where her cubs were. And as she walked back towards her cubs, she needed to, we could be with her. The spot we found her at first was probably about 500 yards from where the cubs were. So we had a pretty long sighting of her. I must say, a very challenging sighting because it was really beginning to pour by then, and we were concerned about our cameras and equipment getting spoiled in the rain. But how can you not photograph a tiger sighting like that? She was absolutely putting up a show for us. She was walking down the road, and we were backing up in front of her. And then she stopped at a waterhole for a drink, and then got up and started walking again. And as she walked, she had now started calling. She had started calling to her cubs, and that's again something even rarer to hear. Tigers are usually not as vocal as lions are. They don't vocalize as frequently as lions do. So hearing a tiger roar or call to its cubs is always a treat. And as Sultana walked, calling to her cubs, she began walking up the hillside. And then, as she reached the top of the hillside, just over a rock, I could see the top of her back. And I noticed that the back ended not in one tiger tail, but in two tiger tails. So that was the sign for us that the cubs had joined her. And a little later, we managed to get a quick view of the cubs as well. And, mother and cubs started to walk down towards the road, and then gave us a few more glimpses of them, and then the tigers vanished and it stopped raining. So we were soaking wet by then, so we also raced back to camp to get to dry clothes. But what a sighting and what an experience to see a tiger in the rain, and to see a tigress calling to her cubs like that, and just to experience the intelligence of these animals. She was a mother and she was out hunting, and she had noticed that the weather was changing, and just in time, just when the rains started pouring, she made it back to her cubs, and she must have walked at least a couple of miles to get to where they were from when the rain began to pour. So, these animals are thinking animals. They do watch their environment. They do calculate things like weather conditions, and they do have enough intelligence to have the welfare of their cubs in the back of their minds. The next morning, it had cleared up, but it was pretty nice and cool weather. There was bright sunshine, but very unlike Ranthambore in the summer. The weather was very nice and cool. In fact, for the first time on the India Tiger Quest trip, we got guest feedback that our pre-departure briefing booklet, which advises people on how to go about the trip, what to carry, what to pack. That the suggestion was that the pre-departure briefing booklet should actually recommend a fleece jacket for India Tiger Quest, which was quite funny because our India Tiger Quest and India Tiger photo expeditions operate at the hottest time of the year in the hottest and driest tiger habitat in the world. It's usually heat that is a problem on this trip rather than cold. But, uh, on an adventure, nothing really is predictable. So, for the first time, we had chilly, nippy mornings, and we actually saw people wrapped in blankets while going on their morning game drive in the middle of April, which was quite funny. So, on the second morning, as the day was beginning to warm up and the temperature was beginning to get comfortable, we were back in zone 4, and we came across fresh tracks of a tiger. It must have walked earlier that morning. Very, very fresh tracks. We were following the tracks, and it was feeling as if at any moment we might find a tiger. But the tracks vanished again into another ravine, and we assumed that the tiger must have decided to rest for the day and we're giving up hope. When we saw some jeep movement far away from us, we were at an elevated spot, and we were scanning the landscape with our binoculars when we saw some jeeps parked in a rather unusual way on an incline, and people in it seemed to be looking down into a ravine. And we went down to check, and sure enough, this male tiger, the dominant male tiger of the lakes area of Ranthambore, which is the central part of the park, a tiger called T120, also called Ganesh. He was on the prowl, and one of our jeeps, most vehicles were caught in what we call a tiger traffic jam, uh, uh, because there were quite a few vehicles that morning, and they were all trying to get a good view, but most people found their view blocked. But one of our vehicles managed to drive around and position ourselves away from the crowds, and I happened to be in it. And we had this fantastic sighting of this big male tiger as it walked across an open sort of grassland kind of area with no obstructions, no distractions, and excellent photo opportunities. Another excellent tiger sighting that we had on this trip was when we found the cubs of a tigress called Riddhi, who is called the queen of the lakes. Every tigress that occupies the lakes area of Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, which is in the central part of the park, as I was just mentioning, is called the queen of the lakes. And these tigresses happen to be all part of the same sort of tiger family. They're all descendants of one tigress who became very famous in the 90s, called Machli, who was the original queen of the lakes. And every tigress that has since occupied that area has been either a daughter, a granddaughter, or a great granddaughter of that tigress. And uh, the present queen of the lakes, or lady of the lakes, as the tigresses there are called, is a tigress called Riddhi. Now, one of our jeeps had actually managed to see her that morning when our other two jeeps were watching T120, the male. But in the afternoon, when we went back to that area, we were hopeful of finding Riddhi. We did not find her, but we found her three cubs. Her cubs were slightly older than Sultana's cubs. They are about a year old, and we spent an entire afternoon, parked very close to these three siblings as they um, as they remain just out of view, out of clear view behind some cover, because tiger cubs are quite disciplined. When mother leaves them alone with instructions to remain quiet and behave themselves, they do actually behave themselves and don't wander about, don't stray much, and they just sit in wait quietly for mother to come back. And that's what these cubs were doing. And as they did that, we had the chance to get some excellent views and some excellent photographs of those cubs. Now, enough of tigers. One of my favorite animals in the jungle, and a very interesting animal to watch, is the sloth bear. The sloth bear is one of the uh, four species of bear that we find in India. But in peninsular India, um, the sloth bear is the only bear that is found, and it is quite widespread and uh, occurs across peninsular India. And there's a very interesting story about why the sloth bear is called a sloth bear. Well, it's not lazy for sure. It's not slow. So why is it called the sloth bear? Well, it turns out that in the early days of taxonomy, when English naturalists first saw this bear, they noticed the claws were very long and curved like the claws of a sloth. So they assumed that they might be related and therefore named it the sloth bear. But of course, bears have nothing to do with sloths, and the sloth bear is no exception. But there is a very interesting reason why it has those long curved claws, and that is because sloth bears are adapted to feeding on termites. They use those claws to dig up termite mounds, and their long and protruding lips form a nice sort of suction cup like a vacuum cleaner and help suck termites out of their mounds. Um, the long, shaggy hair really helps in protecting them against termite bites, but it also helps protect them from another insect, and those are honeybees. Sloth bears will happily climb up trees and raid beehives. They love raiding beehives because honey tastes really good. And again, they rely on their shaggy hair to provide some protection against bee stings. Um, that's another question that I get asked a lot. Why do sloth bears have so much hair when they live in such a hot climate? And that is the reason why they have so much hair on them. The hair is only the top coat. You see, most mammals have two coats, a top coat and an undercoat. Even your dogs or cats, if you look at them, will have two coats. And when mammals molt or shed their coat, it's usually the undercoat, the soft, downy undercoat, which they are shedding, and not the top coat. The undercoat provides warmth and insulation in the colder months, but the top coat breathes very well and does not make the animal feel hotter than it should. And what the top coat also does is that it provides protection for the skin. But in a sloth bear, as you will notice in this picture, the coat gives it pretty good protection all over its body, except for the muzzle and nose. The nose is absolutely exposed, So sloth bear needs to be careful about not getting stung or bitten on his nose. So on one of our drives, in fact, the same drive when we saw Tiger 120, we came across a sloth bear, and our group was very excited. We uh, sort of tracked it down to a dry stream bed, and there were a few other jeeps as well. And we sort of parked ourselves into a corner to have a good view at the bear. And the bear was ambling about, offering us photo opportunities every now and then, when it noticed a beehive on a tree right there. And then it looked up and thought to itself, and then gradually began to climb the tree. That's when we began to get a little worried, because if the sloth bear attacked the beehives, the bees would be very, very angry. And all of our jeeps were parked in a way that a quick exit would not have been possible. So as soon as it started to climb the tree, we started to move our vehicles around, talk to each other, tell each other to get out of a tight spot and be ready for a quick departure. And our anticipation was unnecessary, because as the bear began to climb up the tree, his plans changed very, very quickly. And how that happened, I'll let you see in this video. So, as the bear approached the beehive, climbing up the tree, a bee must have stung it on that soft part of its nose, which was exposed and without hair. And very quickly, the bear changed its mind and decided to rush down the tree and just ran away in pain. Our guest, Victor, who came down all the way from Singapore, took this amazing video. And thank you, Victor, for sharing this video and allowing us to use it on the webinar. I'll let you all have another look at that video so that now that you know the story. So instead of us having to make a quick exit out of there, it was the bear who had to do it. So besides tigers and bears, Ranthambore is such a picturesque park, and the golden blonde hues of that landscape in the summer really sort of function like a canvas for all the colors of nature to really pop out. So it's an excellent park for photography. Any animal or bird that you photograph there really stands out of the landscape, because the landscape in summer is very brown and golden and without foliage. So all colors really show up. So for a photographer wanting to photograph tigers and other Indian wildlife, it's an absolutely dream park. And summer, again, is also the time when a lot of birds start to get into courtship activities. And, peafowl are no exception. Peacocks at this time of the year are frequently seen in full display, trying to impress the peahens, and they spread their tails out in display and make for excellent photography subjects. But if you've ever noticed a peacock in the act of displaying, you will see that not only does it spread its tail out like a fan, but periodically shivers the feathers, and they make a sort of rustling noise. and somehow that is supposed to be attractive for peahens. And I was photographing this peacock with its tail feathers in display when it decided to, shiver its or quiver its quills, and that motion blur was captured beautifully by the camera. And if you look closely at at this picture, the peacock's face is in absolute sharp focus. But if you look at the tail feathers, especially the ones at the very top, they look like beautiful, green flames, and that's because they're in the act of being shaken, and just one of the many amazing photographic opportunities that one gets in the park. So next time you're photographing a peacock, which is considered a pretty common bird to see when on safari in India, and therefore it is a bird that is frequently ignored. Um, Try and get these rarely seen and rarely captured pictures, because some of the best photographs really come out from the most common animals. Here is another peacock that was perched on a rock, high on a rock. So when I was standing in my safari jeep, the peacock was actually at eye level with me. And in the background were some very colorful leaves, some brightly colored green leaves, as well as some scarlet red flowers of a tree called the flame of the forest, which I shall talk about later. And the blue of the peacock really stood out, and I managed to make this photograph, which I personally am quite impressed with. Um, One afternoon, we decided to slow down from the thrill of the chase, looking for tigers all the time, and decided to just sit by a reservoir in an area where there used to be a village earlier. And there were lots of birds there. We just sat down and decided to watch birds, watch some crocodiles who were in the water. And a lot of peacocks were flying around in that area, so we decided to take some shots of peacocks in flight, because you don't often see peacocks in flight. So this is a peahen. The beautiful pink background that you see is actually an aquatic plant that is a surface plant called azolla. And when you see a male peacock in flight, the blue color and the rust wingtips, they really contrast beautifully with each other. This picture could have been even better had this peacock had a full train of feathers, but it didn't. But anyhow, I was very happy to get a photograph in flight of a peacock like this. We also saw some fruit bats, Indian flying foxes, that gave us some good photographic opportunities, and also some good lessons on seed dispersal. You see, fruit bats are or flying foxes. They're called flying foxes because their faces resemble that of a dog or a fox. These bats are large, and they are primarily fruit eaters, as their name suggests. They fly very far distances, almost 15, 20 miles every night, looking for favorite fruit trees. And these fruit bats, they have very high metabolism. They need to poop almost 4 or 5 minutes after eating. That's how quick their digestion is, which means that fruit bats eat a lot at night, and every 4 or 5 minutes they're pooping. And as they cover these long distances, every night, they are going about dispersing seeds of the fruits that they have swallowed. So, what an amazing way for trees to disperse themselves. Here is a rose-ringed parakeet, a very common bird again, but such a photogenic bird. It's it was bright bird, brightly colored green bird. This is a male. It's got a collar around its neck. That's how you tell it's a male. The female doesn't have the collar. So brightly colored green bird standing out brilliantly against the brown, golden, dry background. I also got some of my best pictures of the brown fish owl on this trip. The brown fish owl is again another bird that is seen fairly commonly when on safari in India. And as happens with most commonly seen birds and animals, we don't often put in a lot of time and effort into uh, uh, photographing them because our minds are occupied with rarer and more difficult to find animals such as big cats or wild dogs. But here again was another reminder that spend time with the commoner animals and you will get photographic opportunities that are hard to come by. Brownfish owl, when they're normally seen, most sightings, they are not seen out in the open like this with absolutely no distractions in the frame, no leaves, no branches covering the bird. And if you notice in this picture, the perspective of the photograph is also not how it typically is with birds and owls, which is that it is not looking up like that at a bird perched above you, but eye level, actually even below eye level, because the bird was perched on a low branch and standing up in our jeep. It was actually at eye level with us, and the branch on which it was sitting had no distracting leaves or branches, so or twigs. So excellent photo opportunity there. Now, you might have noticed the red flowers in the background of that peacock image that I showed you earlier. That flower is of a tree known as the flame of the forest, or Butea monosperma. Flame of the forest is a tree that is quite widespread across India. It is a tree that through the rest of the year is quite unremarkable. But as soon as spring begins, the flame of the forest tree starts to shed its leaves and burst into these brilliant scarlet, orangish, red flowers, which even the petals are shaped like a flame. And wherever there are a bunch of flame of the forest trees in the landscape, that entire patch sort of stands out in bright red. And that's why it's a very apt name for this tree. And it's not just birds and animals that provide great photographic opportunities. Even landscapes at different times of the year, especially summer when a lot of our trees come into flower and fruit, um, it's a great time to photograph landscapes looking like they don't usually do here. Um, at any other time of the year, this would not look like this. The flame of the forest flower blooms only for a couple of months in March and April, and sometimes a little into May. And it was a gloomy morning because, as I had mentioned, it had rained the previous night and it was still overcast. But the flame of the forest trees brought so much brightness into what would have otherwise been a gloomy morning. And finding animals or birds on such plants with such colors makes for very pleasing photographs. There was a painted stalk that was perched on one of the flame of the forest trees, and we managed to get some great pictures of it. And yes, those were the highlights of the first India Tiger Quest expedition of the season. And it's a very, very promising season. We have lots of trips lined up. There's lots of action happening in Ranthambore, many young cubs, many new tigers. So lots of things to look forward to. Very soon, I shall be leading an India Tiger photo expedition as well, and I will be sure to come back to you on Daily Dose of Nature with highlights and pictures and lessons from that trip as well. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. If there are any questions that you have about uh, the sightings that we had, or this trip or the park, I'd be happy to hear them. Over to you, Rob.
All right, thank you so much, Aditya. Now, if you do have questions, you can submit your questions via the question field in your control panel. All right, so let's get to some questions here. So, can you explain to us a little bit about what a wildlife preserve is? Does it mean that the wildlife is protected and but it's all still wild? Could you just give us a little bit of a rundown on that?
Absolutely. Rob, so a wildlife preserve in India is a natural habitat, a natural area, a wild area that has been that has been demarcated on a map and set aside for focused protection. So there will be no human activities allowed in that area. The area is kept pristine and well protected. There is a lot of wildlife monitoring that goes on there, and of course, a lot of anti-poaching patrolling and other protection activities that go on. But it is absolutely wholly and truly wild. There are no fences. There is no animal supplementation or moving animals in and out or adding species or the kind of things that you would see in parts of southern Africa. It's absolutely wholly and truly wild.
Thank you so much for explaining that to us. So, um, can you talk about what predators the sloth bears may have?
Well, sometimes tigers do kill them. We have seen that happen a few times in Ranthambore. It does happen in other parts of the country too. But by and large, uh, sloth bears are left alone. Sloth bears have a very bad temperament. They believe in attacking first and asking later. So if any animal surprises a sloth bear, the sloth bear will usually act with aggression. And they're pretty large and pretty powerful. So even most tigers will think several times before taking on a sloth bear, especially in a fight. But even so, some tigers are known to stalk and kill sloth bears.
So, is there a particularly good time for tiger sighting? April, November? Any suggestions?
Well, the best time, of course, is summer. The hotter and drier it is, the better your chances are. Which is why India Tiger Quest and India Tiger Photo Expedition operate only between April through June. But we also run another expedition called the Grand India Wildlife Expedition, which runs from Grand India Wildlife Adventure, which runs from November through April. And even as we speak, there is a Grand India Wildlife Adventure operating. Um, on Grand India Wildlife Adventure, the sightings really begin to pick up quickly from January onwards. And February, March, April have very good tiger sightings. There are good tiger sightings in November, December, and January too, but you're more likely to find tigers walking and on the move or even courting at that time of the year than being localized around water. The good thing about sightings in the winter is that tigers are in thick and beautiful winter coat, so they look absolutely stunning. And the misty mornings and the cool temperatures give some beautiful photographic opportunities, not to mention the beautiful light.
So, when you say it's hot in April, just how hot are we talking about?
Well, our trip was an exception. It never really got hot. The hottest it got to was 96 on one afternoon, Fahrenheit. But usually, in the peak of summer, the midday temperatures will go up to, they can range between, say, 90 to 110, 115 sometimes. close to 120 in the end of May and the beginning of June.
And is it humid as well?
No, it's dry climate. It's Ranthambore is close to the Great Indian Desert or the Thar Desert, and it's a semi-arid landscape, so very little water there, and the air is dry. So it's a dry heat, which is far more tolerable than humid heat.
So, how often do tigers have cubs?
About every 2.5 to 3 years, roughly about 3 years, because it takes 1 litter of cubs about 2 to 2.5 years to leave their mother and go. And only then will she get into another estrus cycle and mate for the next litter. And the gestation is about 3 months. So, yeah, you can say that about every 3 years, tigresses have cubs.
Great, thank you. So, Aditya, what's next up for you? What's the next trip you're going to be leading?
The next trip I'm going to be leading is the India Tiger Photo Expedition, which begins on the 18th of April. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's a trip that gives tremendous wildlife photography opportunities and 11 game drives in Ranthambore in the summer. That's a treat because you get to see so much.
All right. Well, one or two of our viewers are going to be lucky enough to be on that trip with you.
Oh,
Well,
fantastic.
unfortunately, that's going to be the last question that we do have time for today, Aditya. So I'd like to hand it back to you for some closing comments.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you to our wonderful audience. I would like to thank Victor in particular for sharing pictures and videos for this webinar. This webinar wouldn't have been the same without that bear video, Victor. Thank you again. And I would like to thank all our audience for attending today, and I look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you.
Aditya, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in today. If you are interested in information on how you can travel with NatHab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. Join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including our registration links, on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.